Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Trusts and Estates Weekly. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we are here every Monday morning, starting off the day, or starting off the week, I should say. I guess starting off the day too. It's 10 a.m. here in the Pacific time zone, and we're here, like I said, every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And we spend half an hour talking about matters related to estates and trusts, so that you have the opportunity to add this to add to your business services that deal with these somewhat complex legal, I'll call them situations. We're actually going to get into the basics of what they are today. So if you're not at all familiar with traits, with estates, trusts, probate, executors, trustees, and all that sort of thing, I'm going to go through all of that in the next 30 minutes or so that you can get a handle on it and see and understand how your business could benefit by working with trusts and estates. So I'm going to jump right into it by sharing my screen. I like to use PowerPoints. Some people, I think, just talk, but I find it's easier to understand things when there's something in front of you as well. So this is the show here, Trust and Estates Weekly, hosted by Kevin Bemmel. I just have to point out, here's like a really cool pen. This looks like my keyboard, I think, pretty much. Yeah, right. Anyway, so let's get right into it. There we go. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about three basic, I'll call them concepts: estate, trust, and probate. These three make up really the heart of dealing with these kind of situations. Okay, I just got a message from my daughter, so always makes it a good day. Okay, so estate, trusts, and probate. All right, so when we hear the word estate, I think most of us think about some big, huge house in the countryside in England. For those of you like me who are fans of Downton Abbey, you might think of I can't think. Of Downton Abbey, right? That was the name of the home that Lord Grantham and his family lived in. It was surrounded by lands that were used for farming. He owned the land under the nearby village, and we think of like a state, like some super wealthy person who has all kinds of real estate, basically. So while the term estate is applied to a situation like that, the reason it's called an estate is because it represents the property owned by that individual. So not only is his estate the land and the buildings on it, but it's also all the personal property, the movable property that he owns. So there are two types of property under the law. There's real property and personal property. So real property is land, buildings, or things attached to the land, and what are called appurtenances. So appurtenances are things that automatically are sold when the land is sold. So, for example, unless they have been sold off separately, the mineral rights to a piece of real estate is an appurtenance, meaning, let's say, for example, there was oil located underneath your house. And you say, oh, come on, that's ridiculous, that's crazy. Actually, where I live, many of the houses have oil underneath them, and maybe 6-7 blocks away is this sort of nondescript, it looks like a building. It's really just kind of a wall with wall with a cover. I guess that's a building, but it's really just like, and inside it are pumps for pumping out the oil under the homes in this area. Now, the homeowners get royalties from the oil that's pumped out and sold. So those mineral rights, and you may not think of oil as a mineral, but it's included in the term mineral rights. So that is an appurtenance. It is something that automatically is sold with the house. Okay, so those are the three things that make up real property. Personal property is basically anything that's not real property. So otherwise known as movable property. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you have a big tree growing on your on the land that your house is on. Okay, so as long as that tree is attached to the ground, it is real property. Okay, it's anything attached to the land. Okay, so now let's say that you cut the tree down and had it cut into logs, or you cut it into logs yourself. So you've turned that tree into personal property now. It's no longer attached to the ground, and now it's just wood, basically. Maybe you're gonna, turn it into some kind of creative furniture. Maybe you're gonna burn it in a fireplace. Maybe you're just gonna have it hauled away because the tree was undermining the foundation. You had to get rid of it. In any event, that tree that was once attached to the ground was part of the real estate is now personal property because it's been detached and it's laying on the ground. Now, let's say you took that wood and you cut it up and turned it into stakes that you could use as fence posts and cross pieces to put up between the stakes, and you used it to build a fence, and you dug holes and you set the posts in concrete in the ground, or you may have just pounded the posts into the ground, and you've reattached the wood to the ground. Now you have taken that personal property and turned it back into real property because that fence is attached to the ground and it's become real property again. Okay, so an estate is actually all real or personal property owned by a person. Okay, and you have your estate when you're still alive. Okay, and the property that you own, it may be changing, and so your estate, what's in your estate, is changing. Okay, at some point when you die, okay, in essence, the property that you own is now frozen, at least until something is done with it. And so all that property is now your estate, and that is what's available to be distributed to your heirs, the people who are going to inherit it from you. Now, someone could have an estate comprised solely of, let's say, their car. And maybe that's the only property they own, or their car, maybe some clothes, maybe they have a few $100s in a checking account. That could be the total amount of their estate. That's still an estate, okay? But you could have, a huge estate worth, billions of dollars, and it has real estate, stocks, bonds, interests in business, other investments. Okay, so the size is immaterial to whether it is an estate or not. That size makes no difference. Okay, the estate is all the property that you own. Now, at the time, or once you die, okay, now the estate has to be settled. Okay, and that means the property needs to be collected. The debts, any outstanding debts, including taxes, need to be paid, and then what's left gets distributed to your heirs. Okay, and it is oftentimes the management of the estate while the person is alive, and then the settling of the estate after the person has died. That's where there's an opportunity to help people and to expand your business. Okay, so if you're in I mentioned some of these last week: the real estate business, the insurance business, the financial services business, the management business. All of those businesses can help people with their estate. Now, if someone has a small estate, a car, some clothes, and a few $100s, candidly, there's probably not much available there to help them with. Number one, there's not much to take care of. And number two, they don't really have any funds to pay someone to help them deal with it. So generally speaking, that's not someone that we're going to be looking for in terms of a client. Now, by the way, we may help someone if they have a problem with their estate, just to help them out, just in order to, be a nice person, or maybe the person is a friend of ours or a family member. I do that all the time. Okay, a very long-standing friend of mine from college. He recently retired from his job, and he got a big payout, but he doesn't need me to do anything. What I've done is I referred him to an attorney who can help him set up a trust and that kind of thing. So my philosophy is, if someone has an issue with their property, I'm going to help them out. If it's just giving them a referral, then that's what I'll do. If it's being engaged by them to handle something for them, then I'm happy to do that as well. And I do recommend that you adopt this philosophy, because you'll become known as a professional, and as a professional who puts the needs of a client or potential client, or just someone who has a need, above your own. Okay, some people, look, they don't have a lot of assets, they don't have a very big estate, but they still need something taken care of. And so, gosh, help them out if you can. Okay, maybe, hopefully you don't have to spend a lot of time, just help them out. And they'll spread the word. It's good, karma, if you will. Okay, so that's what an estate is. Next is a trust. So a trust is essentially a separate entity from a human being. Okay, and they're set up for a variety of reasons. Okay, and I'm not going to get into all the reasons that they're set up, but one of the most common reasons is to avoid a process known as probate, which is what we're going to talk about in a few minutes. Okay, so when a trust is set up and a person's or people's estate is transferred to the trust, okay, so that trust survives the death of the people who set it up, and that way it evolves. It avoids this process known as probate. And like I said, we'll talk about probate in a minute, but you'll see why it's a process that many, if not all, people want to avoid. Okay, now, in order to set up a trust, a legal document is created, and it's just called the trust document. Okay, oftentimes there's more than one document. It depends on the complexity of the situation. Okay, I'm not going to get into the legal details of this. We'll have some experts on that'll talk about this in coming weeks. But a trust has a minimum of 3 parties to it. Now, or I should say, well, yeah, 3 parties. Now, by the way, there could be one person holding all 3 of these positions, okay? Or all 3 of them could be different, or 2 could be the same and 1 could be different, okay? That doesn't matter. That's going to depend on the specifics of the particular trust and the needs of the people setting it up. Okay, so the first position we're going to talk about is the trustor or the grantor. I put the plurals there, because there could be, in all of these cases, there could be more than one person in these roles. So the trustor or the grantor, it's the same position. It's just different names for the same position. That is the person setting up the trust. Okay. The trustee is the person who manages the trust once it's set up. And the beneficiary is the person who benefits from the trust. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let's say there's a married couple and they own a house, a couple of cars, and maybe they have some stocks and bonds in a portfolio, and maybe altogether, once you subtract out the debt, their what's called their net worth, which is their assets minus their liabilities, that gives you net worth. Their net worth, let's say it's $250,000. Okay. So they decide that they're going to set up a trust and transfer all of their property into it. So the husband and wife are the trustors or the grantors. Again, it's just a different name for the same position. They're the people who set up the trust. Now, they're probably also going to be the trustees, meaning they're going to retain management authority of those assets. Okay. Now, they don't have to. They may appoint another trustee, or they may be the trustees, but they may have a secondary trustee who will take over in the event that they become incapacitated or something like that. Okay, so they may have both those positions, and in fact, they may remain or they may also be the beneficiaries of the property. Of the trust, so that they still get the benefits of owning the property. Okay, that would be a very common use of a trust. Okay, and you can see right away that if this married couple were to do that, first of all, they'd need someone to draft the legal documents, probably an estate planning attorney. They might need accounting advice, okay, as to what assets specifically should go into the trust and what shouldn't. So, for example, maybe they have a life insurance policy that has equity in it. Now, a lot of people I know say, never buy anything other than term life. We'll talk about those kind of things separately. But let's just say, for whatever reason, they have a life insurance policy that has a cash value in it. Should that be transferred into the trust or not? Well, so that's a question to ask, your accountant. Okay, I'm not giving tax or legal advice, accounting or legal advice here, tax advice. I'm not doing anything. I'm just posing the questions. Should any particular asset go into the trust? Should the cars go into the trust? Okay, so here in California, if a spouse dies, their car automatically transfers to a surviving spouse without having to go through probate. You can just go down to the DMV and make that transfer. Okay, so should the cars go into the trust? Again, I'm not going to give any advice here. Okay, I'm just telling you what the circumstances are. Okay, now a trust could be set up for their children. So let's say they want to. Let's say maybe they have their child has special needs. Maybe the child has autism. Okay, and while the child can be somewhat self-sufficient, the child won't be able to be self-sufficient even when he's an adult. Okay, and the parents want to make sure that there's always resources available to pay for those special needs for that child. Okay, so in that case, they'll be the trustors or the grantors. Okay, they probably will also be the trustees, at least initially, but they will probably also appoint a successor trustee so that when they die, or if they predecease their child, meaning they die before their child, there'll still be somebody there to manage the trust on behalf of the beneficiary, who in this case is not them, it's their child. Okay, so here's a case where there are different parties to the trust. Okay, so those are just two fairly simple examples. There are very, very complicated trusts that exist. Okay, now I put down here the last thing: revocable versus irrevocable. Now, some trusts are revocable, meaning the trustors who set it up can in effect destroy the trust or get rid of it. Basically revoke it. That's where the term comes from. Okay. In other cases, the trust is irrevocable, meaning once it's set up, it cannot be destroyed or gotten rid of. It continues to exist. Okay. So one of the reasons why this is important is if a trust is revocable. I'm not sure why I'm making so many miss words today. If a trust is revocable, then any taxes due on income that the trust generates is paid by and is a responsibility of the trustors. If a trust is irrevocable, that trust is now a separate legal entity and it's responsible for paying its own taxes. And because of the different taxation rates for people versus trusts, that may or may not be a good thing. So again, this is somewhere where you're going to want to get tax and legal advice. Do I want to make my trust revocable or irrevocable? Okay. And those are important decisions. You can't make any blanket statements about whether they should or should not. Okay. So those are trusts. Okay. And you can see again, there's lots of opportunity to help people with them. Okay. Now finally, probate. So probate is a court process. Okay. So when a person dies, if they didn't leave a trust, their estate will have to go through probate in a process the process is known as probate. And they may have a will, which is a document that says who is going to get their various assets. If they don't have a will and there's no trust, they're said to have died intestate. Okay, intestate is, I think, Latin. It means without a will. Okay, so whether there's a will or no will at all, their estate is going to have to be probated, meaning it's going to have to go through this court process. And what happens is if there's a will, the will appoint an executor, which is the person charged with overseeing the probate process. Okay, by the way, there used to be executor and executrix. Executor man, executrix female. I don't think they're using the term executrix anymore, although I do see it in documents on occasion. Okay, but the executor is the person appointed in the will to see the process of probating the estate. Now, if maybe the executor died before the person whose will it needs to be probated died, and so is not available to oversee the probate process. So then the court will appoint an administrator. And the administrator does the same thing that the executor does. It's just the administrator wasn't appointed in the will, or appointed by the will, I should say. The administrator is appointed by the probate court. Okay. And by the way, you used to have administrator man, administratrix woman. Isn't that a mouthful of a word, right? But now again, I don't think courts are using those two different terms. So it doesn't matter. Okay. Now in the process of probate, basically all of the assets in the estate are collected or identified is probably a better word, as are all the debts. And then the executor sees to it that the debts are paid, including any taxes. Okay. And then after that, the remaining property is doled out to the heirs, either as they're designated in the will, or if there is no will, according to the law of the state in which the probate is being held. So there are laws when someone dies intestate, there are laws that determine who is a close enough relative to receive the property. Okay. Now I've just really been very simple in talking about this. Of course, probates can be very complicated. Okay, now let me just give you one more twist because we're almost out of time. Let's say people that married couple, they set up their trust and either didn't transfer their property into the trust, or they transferred some of their property into the trust but not the rest. In that case, whatever is in the trust will not have to go through probate, but anything that wasn't transferred into the trust may have to go through probate. Okay, so in that case, you could have a situation where a trust needs to be administrated, but also a probate needs to be done as well. Okay, so the idea of the trust typically in a situation like this is to avoid probate altogether, but that doesn't always happen for various reasons. Okay, so you could have both of these things needing to happen with the same situation. And again, you can see there are a lot of areas where people need help. So they may need help having a will drawn up. They may need help understanding how to how to set all that stuff up, who should be their executor, et cetera, et cetera. Also, just because someone is appointed an executor in a will doesn't mean that person knows anything about how to do the probate process. So, and even if so, they may not be a lawyer. So they're going to need a lawyer to help them in filing the probate action, in handling various aspects of it. Okay. So again, lots and lots of opportunity for professionals to be involved in helping people who have to probate an estate, either as an executor or as an administrator. Okay, so those are the basics. Go through them one more time. Estate, trust, probate. Those are the basic terms that we'll be dealing with throughout these shows. And we'll just end up with the legal stuff here, or the copyright and all that kind of stuff. If you have any questions at all, feel free to drop a comment into either our social media sites or on YouTube, where this video will post in just a couple of minutes, okay? Or feel free to reach out to me via email. All of the social media and email will be listed in the show notes. Always happy to answer any questions. If there's a particular topic that you would like to learn about as well, let me know. Would be happy to put together a show on your specific topic. So that's what we have this week on Trusts and Estate Weekly. Do want to just take a moment and mention my other two shows tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time is Business Lessons from the Military. We spend a half an hour talking about, currently we're working with Marine Corps warfighting doctrine and how we can use that to develop a sound doctrine for starting and operating our businesses. And then on Wednesday is People Making Money. That's at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. And on that show, it's a very broad-based show. We talk to people who have interesting ways of making a living that they really enjoy. And we talk about how to build your career, how to build wealth, how to deal with your finances. And so all of those topics get included there. So I hope you will make plans to join me all 3 times each week, or even just once a week. That would be terrific as well. You can always go to our Eventbrite page. Just look for Kevin Bemmel on Eventbrite, and you'll see the different shows that are there. You can get a free ticket, join me live, ask me questions. That would be terrific. So thanks very much for tuning in today, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow and next week. Have a great rest of your day. And Marie, darling, you are still my belle. All the best, folks.